How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Many Interpretations of video, where today we are taking a look at everybody's favorite Therizinosaurus, or as many people like to call it, the tickle chicken, because of the massive claws. Therizinosaurus is definitely an extremely cool and unique dinosaur, or at least family of dinosaurs, because there are more Therizinosaurids out there. Very unique in the way that they were almost primarily herbivorous, yet had huge claws, like the largest claws that we know of. Absolutely massive slashers, essentially. Now, there's a lot of flux about exactly what these claws were used for. There was a recent paper that was detailing them being used more so for display rather than defense or something along those lines, or possibly for digging, because they were relatively weak and so couldn't have been used for slashing or stabbing or things along those lines. But there's still a lot of things up in the air when it comes to those claws. But little fun fact about those claws: when they were initially discovered, it was thought that Therizinosaurus was a giant turtle, based off of the claws. A lot has changed since then, but we have a lot of really cool media interpretations to take a look at, so let's get right into it. First up, we have the very popular Nigel Marven documentary, Chased by Dinosaurs, where we get a naked Therizinosaurus. We aren't going to be seeing too many of these because feathers were applied to them relatively quick. But one thing when it comes to feathering and Therizinosaurus itself is that there is some debate on that, because Therizinosaurus was a big theropod dinosaur. So there's a lot of question on whether or not it was just too big to benefit from full feathering like smaller dinosaurs. Of course, smaller relatives of Therizinosaurus have been found with feathers. That's why they're often applied to Therizinosaurus itself. But really the question is like how many feathers it had. Did it have full feathering? Did it have sparse feathering? Did it have no feathering? Who truly knows? Anyway, we need to talk about this. It is a featherless Therizinosaurus. It has the huge claws. The head actually looks pretty good. We haven't found a skull for Therizinosaurus specifically, but we have found skulls of its relatives, and yeah, this seems about right. This seems like the right ballpark. For the most part, it seems like it holds its hands correctly, which is like inwards instead of downwards. Clapping motion instead of playing the drums motion. If it tried to play the drums, it would break its wrists. So that's not preferable. But it definitely captures the spirit of Therizinosaurus, where it's kind of just like this really weird looking dinosaur with a long neck, the relatively short tail, and just everything along those lines. It's a great design in those aspects. Next up is Dinosaur King. This is a fantastic design. They opted for the downy feathering. Of course, it's decently shrink wrapped in true Dinosaur King fashion, but it has really cool colors, and the patterns that are used for it are fantastic, and the proportions seem pretty good. Again, the head looks good, the giant claws are correct, even if its wrists are breaking. But all things considered, this is a fantastic design, I think. Next up is Tarbosaurus, the mightiest ever. We get another naked Therizinosaurus. No feathering is present. Again, one of those few instances where we see something like that, but it has the very small head, has the huge claws, and has decent coloration. One thing I do want to point out is that we do see it eating like a young Tarbosaurus, and I did mention before that it is an herbivorous dinosaur, or at least mostly herbivorous. Now, this would, operating under the assumption that it is a 100% herbivorous animal, this is under the realm of possibility. Why is that? Well, because today nothing is 100% herbivorous. We see animals in nature all the time that we perceive as vegetarians indulging in a quick little snack that is of the meat variety to supplement their diet with some extra protein. So to think that dinosaurs did the exact same thing, even if they were, completely herbivorous, that's not outside of the realm of possibility. So that's just something I wanted to point out, because every once in a while I see that clip go around, and there's always someone in the comments saying, "Oh, Therizinosaurus was herbivorous." Just know that dinosaurs probably did the same thing that modern day animals do. They're not, like, nothing is ever truly 100% vegetarian with nature. It's all very gray. There's a lot more gray than there is black and white. But next up, we'll go with the animated, or children's animation variety with Dinosaur Train. We're back to the feathers, and we get a design that has the beak, has the claws, of course, and seems to portray them using them in the way to like pull down branches, which is likely for Therizinosaurus. That's one of the main ideas for their claws. I really like the patterns and the coloration that they get, as well as seeing like the younger ones and the differences between, you know, individualization. Very decent design, all things considered. After that, we have Dino Dan and Dino Dana. This is an incredible design. You know, this is not a show that I've ever really watched. You know, these shows were past my time. Same with Dinosaur Train. So there's a lot of dinosaurs that show up in this. You know, I've kind of scrolled through the images and there's a lot that shows up. I really like the way that the Therizinosaurus looks. The colors, like the white with the red accents and the kind of red spots, and the claws look really good. The head looks really good with the beak. Everything about it, I think, looks fantastic. You know, this is probably one of my favorite designs of the animal that I've seen so far. 10 out of 10. Moving on, we have Speckles, the Tarbosaurus, and this one is, ugh. I gotta be honest, this one ain't great. What is going on with its head? It's definitely not based off of any Therizinosaur head that I've ever seen. It's just... I'm not really a fan. I wouldn't really say that I'd consider myself a fan of this design. We'll just leave it at that. After that, we do have the Dino King 3D Journey to the Fire Mountain. Pretty long name. It looks like we have a young Therizinosaurus that shows up in this with kind of a purple coloration, some sparse feathers here and there, and a kind of pointed beak, and an interesting kind of mohawk type structure going on. It's a decent design. It has slit pupils, not something that you commonly see for the animal. And it's a young one. It looks like his name is Slash. Very fitting because claws. But another project that I'm not too overly familiar with, but judging from this design, it's, you know, I feel like it probably fits the style of this movie. And now we get a little bit more modern with Prehistoric Planet that has absolutely amazing Therizinosaurus designs. Particularly in one of my favorite scenes ever, where it's a few baby Therizinosaurs trying to get some honey. It's very fun. And then the large one that has an awesome design then slashes down the beehive to take the honey. It was just fantastic. These designs are incredible. They do opt for the more completely feathered route with some really cool plumage on top of its head. Of course, the claws are spot on. They're facing the correct way. But I especially love the designs of the babies. Baby Therizinosaurs, aside from the previous one on the list, we don't really see too many baby Therizinosaurs, and I think that these designs are fantastic. You know, they look different enough from the adults to seem like they're babies, just with stubbier features and things like that. They look really great. And even though we don't see Therizinosaurs too frequently, save for a few brief appearances in the desert episode as well as later on in the show, I think that it has a lasting impression, and it's one of my favorite designs of this animal so far. But of course, I'm sure you remember, in the same year we get the Jurassic Franchise's interpretation, at least official interpretation of Therizinosaurus, and it's interesting. You know, it's not necessarily my favorite design of the animal. It's opted for more of the sparse feathering rather than full feathering, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is just as likely because of how, you know, their large size. Full feathering might not be too great for them because overheating is always a problem. They also go for a huge head. Now, granted, we have not found, as I mentioned earlier, we have not found a skull of Therizinosaurus itself, but this is quite different to other Therizinosaurs. But the claws look great, and, you know, all things considered, I really like the colors. It's not a terrible design, and it's always great to see some feathers implemented on non-avian dinosaurs in the Jurassic franchise, but it's not really my favorite design. You know, all things considered, I do have a lot of Jurassic franchise designs that I love, like the T-Rex, even though that is, of course, not accurate. This is just not a design that I necessarily gravitate towards, but it's still cool that Therizinosaurus is here. The whole scene that it's in is one of my favorites. You know, I love seeing herbivorous dinosaurs being a little bit more threatening, you know, something that we haven't seen too frequently in media. We do every once in a while, but it's still great to see it, as well as the interesting added flair that it is a blind dinosaur and kind of uses echolocation to traverse, which was interesting and helped set it apart from other dinosaurs. So yeah, you know, it's just, there's some things I like about it, but other things that I could probably do without. But we'll stick with the Jurassic franchise and go to Jurassic World the game. This design is a lot more reminiscent to what we actually think of Therizinosaurus, with the smaller head and a beak that isn't nearly as pointed, and some downy feathering, as well as the claws, but the wrists that are breaking. But of course, in true Jurassic World the game fashion, if you level it up to level 40, it just goes crazy. It actually gets a huge crest and is very, very bird-like, almost like a cassowary. Such a unique design, and it's kind of funky, you know, you gotta love it. Now, typically with this series, I've mainly been focusing on kind of like big production, company released products, things like that, in terms of media interpretations of these designs. But of course, over the videos, I've gotten many requests to look at Deadsound series such as Dinosauria, which is a series that I have seen and loved, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend going and checking it out. It's an incredible series. Also watch the behind-the-scenes videos that he does for each episode. But, of course, recently he has been putting out a new series known as Sauria, which is, instead of going for more naturalistic, it's going for, a lot more of a fantasy setting. And it's, so far, he's released one video, and it's a really good watch as well. I might do further videos on these series in the future. But anyway, we're talking about Therizinosaurus, and Therizinosaurus does make an appearance in the first episode of Sauria with an incredible design. Very cool blue coloration with the lighter head, and all of the proportions are correct as well. It's shown in kind of like basically an execution setting, which is entertainment for the specific species that are putting it on. And, watching behind the scenes, he also mentioned that all of the dinosaurs present in this world or at least the domesticated dinosaurs, are the product of selective breeding. So they have selectively bred, say, this Therizinosaurus to get it to where it has more of a blue coloration, which matches their skin. It's just a fun fact. I really like the work that he does, so I recommend going and checking out that type of stuff. Ark Survival Evolved also, of course, has a Therizinosaurus, and I love this design. It has a bigger head than what is probably likely for Therizinosaurus, but it looks really cool. I like the feathering. I like the extra structures that it possesses, very reminiscent of a turkey. The huge claws. It's extremely aggressive in game, of course, but I really like this design. In terms of Ark designs, this is one that I do gravitate towards more than others because I'm not the biggest fan of Ark designs, all things considered, but I do like this one. I think that this one's very good. And of course, the Isle. I feel like this was a very popular dinosaur in the Isle. I know it's not in Arima just yet, but probably one day. But at least in Legacy, it had a very good design. It has the claws, small head, long neck. But one interesting thing is just the amount of feathers towards the end of it, like on the tail. Very interesting to see. Not really something that is too typical in its portrayals, but certainly does stand out on the animal. After that, we have fossil fighters with more of a pink and a green and striped look to it. It's a good design, too. It gets everything correct about Therizinosaurus. All of the things I mentioned before. It doesn't really look like they go for the feathers, but I don't think that's really the point of a design like this. So this is another great design. And you cannot forget Paleo Pines that has, various different colors for their Therizinosaurus, and they get everything correct about Therizinosaurus too. The speculative feathers look great, the smaller head, and just the stylized look to it, even though it has all of the attributes that we know from Therizinosaurus. So this is a very cute and just awesome design, all things considered. Then I know that if I don't mention this one, I will get some comments for it, but I don't typically look at mods. I mainly look at officially released things, but I will mention the Path of Titans Therizinosaurus mod. That looks like it takes a little bit of influence from the Isle, specifically with those feathers towards the end of it, or on the tail. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. The colors look great, especially some of the colors they get to give it. The claws look great. Path of Titans mods typically do look really good. Yeah, that people really do kill it when they make their mods. So, like I said, I'd probably be mistaken if I decided not to include this one. Then after that is Dino Crisis. Very, very interesting design. It looks like they opted for more of kind of like a raptor almost sort of look. But it has very long and vicious looking claws and has very interesting structure on its skull. But again, that skull is very reminiscent of a raptor skull. Also a shorter, stubbier neck, longer tail. But it's certainly a standout on this list. That is for sure. And that's pretty much the extent of Therizinosaurus itself. But there are a few other miscellaneous Therizinosaurids that show up in media that there's not enough media interpretations of them to justify a full video. So I'm going to put them in here. Starting off with Planet Dinosaur with Nothronicus. This design looks fantastic for a Therizinosaur. Small head, long neck, kind of like a turkey potbelly bear just walking around, downy feathering, the huge claws. This is a fantastic design. This is one that always stood out to me when I would watch Planet Dinosaur, and I watched it all the time when I was younger. And as mentioned before, these downy feathers might be possible for Therizinosaurids. So we'll stick to that vein and move on to When Dinosaurs Roamed America with another Nothronicus. And a lot of the same things I said before apply. The small head, the beak, the belly, the feathers, the claws, another great design. And once again, with Nothronicus, there was one that was kind of revealed earlier for Prehistoric Kingdom. It's really kind of up in the air if a lot of those early revealed ones will end up going to the game, because I know that some of them haven't been confirmed further, so who knows? Hopefully Nothronicus shows up for Prehistoric Kingdom, especially with designs that look like this, because these look incredible. They apply a lot of the same things that I've said a million times already. The type of feathering, the interesting posture that they had, long neck, small head, the beak. Got all the checks, all the check boxes, we got them all checked. And the colors look really cool as well. And I think that they would especially look extremely good in a finished state. So hopefully a dinosaur like this does show up in Prehistoric Kingdom one day. I'd love to see it. And finally, we have Bapiosaurus from the Isle. I think it's a good design. It's one that I do like. Bapiosaurus is a very interesting Therizinosaur. It's one of the smaller ones, but it's one of the only ones that's confirmed to have feathers as well, because it was fossilized with feathers. We can also get the color from those feathers. Very interesting dinosaur, all things considered. In the game, gameplay-wise, it's portrayed as being really good at swimming, which is interesting for a Therizinosaur. That's not really something that's rooted in any accuracy. That's mainly just a gameplay thing, but just something that I wanted to bring up. Still, very cool that something like Bapiosaurus does make an appearance in something like this, and it's got a fun design, I think. But there we are, though. That is a very good portion of the many interpretations of Therizinosaurus and some of its close relatives. This was a very fun one to make. There was a lot of really cool ones to take a look at. And most of them were pretty consistently good too. This is a solid creature to show up in media, and I liked the majority of the portrayals that we saw. On that note, we are getting very close to 10,000 subscribers, and a little bit of a reminder that at 10,000 subscribers, we will be doing a many interpretations of T-Rex, which is a huge one. I've already started doing some of the pre-production work on that, like compiling a list, and it's a huge list. This is going to be a very long video. I'm trying to figure out how to do it in such a way that I don't just get repetitive with what I'm speaking and things like that. Otherwise, it'd be a very boring video. But I am working on that now. That way I'm not too much of in a rush if we ever do reach 10,000 subscribers. But thank you guys all so much for following. That, is incredibly awesome, and we're very close to that goal. I'm very excited to see if we do reach it, and it would definitely be a very fun video to get out there. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.